This is the Wise Guy channel, and today we're taking an in-depth look at the Middle East. Welcome to an overview of the Middle East's complex and turbulent history, a region shaped by deep historical, religious, and geopolitical factors. In the next 10 minutes, we'll trace the story from the founding of Israel in 1948 up to the current tensions involving Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and many others. Our story begins in the late 19th century with the rise of Zionism, a Jewish movement advocating for a homeland in Palestine. At the time, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire, and although it held ancient Jewish ties, it was predominantly home to Arabs. In response to rising anti-Semitism, Jewish leaders promoted a movement encouraging Jews to return to this ancestral land. By the 1940s, after the horrors of the Holocaust, the call for a Jewish homeland became more urgent. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan, dividing Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. But this idea sparked conflict. The Jewish population accepted the plan, but the Arab population saw it as an infringement on their land. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence, igniting the first Arab-Israeli war as neighboring Arab countries, including Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, invaded. This 1948 conflict marked the beginning of a cycle of warfare. Israel, despite the odds, successfully defended its territory, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were expelled, creating a refugee crisis that remains unresolved. Israel's victory set a precedent for future wars, and the struggle for territory and recognition deepened regional divides. The 1956 Suez Crisis was the next major flashpoint. Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, asserting Egypt's control over the key waterway. This move provoked Israel, France, and the UK, who joined forces to regain access to the canal. Although they succeeded militarily, international pressure, especially from the US and the Soviet Union, forced them to withdraw. This moment set the stage for the US and USSR to extend their influence in the Middle East. Then, in 1967, the region was forever changed by the Six-Day War. In a preemptive strike against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, Israel captured large areas of territory: the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula, and Golan Heights. These lands brought Israel into direct control over significant Palestinian populations, intensifying demands for Palestinian self-determination. It also marked a shift toward a longer-lasting military occupation, with these territories becoming focal points of conflict. In 1973, Egypt and Syria launched the Yom Kippur War, catching Israel off guard on Judaism's holiest day. This intense battle led to a stalemate but showed that Arab countries could seriously challenge Israel. Following this, the Cold War's influence increased as the United States and the Soviet Union supplied weapons and aid to opposite sides, turning the Middle East into a critical Cold War battleground. In response to these wars, Palestinian groups became increasingly active. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, founded in 1964, sought to establish a Palestinian state through both political and military means. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, various Palestinian factions employed guerrilla warfare, seeking to draw attention to the Palestinian plight. The First Intifada, or uprising, began in the late 1980s, as Palestinians in the occupied territories protested Israeli rule through strikes, boycotts, and sometimes violent confrontations. Amid rising global pressure, 1993 saw an initial breakthrough: the Oslo Accords. Israel and the PLO agreed on a framework for a two-state solution, but peace remained elusive. Key issues like the status of Jerusalem, borders, and Palestinian refugees prevented lasting agreement. The Second Intifada erupted in 2000, bringing even greater violence and illustrating how deeply entrenched both sides' positions had become. Meanwhile, Iran was emerging as a powerful regional player. Following the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran became a theocratic state, with policies sharply opposed to US and Israeli interests. To expand its influence, Iran began backing groups hostile to Israel, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and later Hamas in Gaza. Iran's goal: to surround Israel with hostile groups while projecting its power across the Middle East. Tensions over Iran's nuclear program, which began in the 2000s, became a major focus for Israel and the United States. They viewed a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat, sparking espionage, cyberattacks, and economic sanctions to curb Iran's ambitions. The 2011 Arab Spring introduced further chaos. Protests against autocratic regimes led to dramatic upheaval across the Arab world. But no conflict was more destructive than Syria's civil war. Originally a pro-democracy uprising, the Syrian conflict drew in powerful players. Iran and Hezbollah supported Syria's leader Bashar al-Assad, while the US, Turkey, and others backed opposition forces. The war became a devastating proxy battle, with Russia stepping in to secure Assad's position while Israel carried out airstrikes to prevent Iranian forces from gaining a foothold near its borders. Saudi Arabia, a Sunni-majority kingdom, perceives Iran, a Shiite-majority state, as a direct threat to its influence. This Saudi-Iranian rivalry has intensified across the Middle East, resulting in proxy conflicts in places like Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. The power struggle has led to shifting alliances. Traditionally Arab states are moving closer to Israel as they perceive Iran as the primary regional threat. In 2020, the Abraham Accords saw the UAE and Bahrain formally recognize Israel, a move that would have been unthinkable just a few years prior. The Gaza Strip, an area of ongoing conflict, has been under Hamas control since 2007. Periodic flare-ups between Hamas and Israel result in devastating conflicts that primarily affect civilians on both sides. Israel cites self-defense in response to rocket attacks, while Palestinians argue against the ongoing blockades and restrictions that heavily impact daily life. The international community often calls for peace, but a resolution remains elusive. As we move to recent years, the United States has continued its efforts to broker normalization deals between Israel and Arab states, aimed at fostering stability in the region. However, Iran remains a point of contention. Iran continues to support Hezbollah, Hamas, and other groups as part of its regional influence, often leading to increased sanctions and diplomatic tensions with the West. Moreover, internal shifts in Israel's politics, with right-wing coalitions pushing for stronger military actions, have added complexities to peace efforts, as more conservative approaches sometimes create additional friction with neighboring countries. This brings us to a critical point: the future of the Middle East. With territorial grievances, religious conflicts, and major global powers continually influencing events, the question persists: will this region ever find lasting peace? Or are these cycles of conflict bound to repeat? This is a story that continues to evolve with new challenges and shifting alliances. Thank you for watching. If you'd like more in-depth analysis, don't forget to subscribe.